right, so go to Song of Songs 8. And this will be the last teaching for this week. And then you got 11 more weeks of lecture. Whoa, what else is going to happen? What else are we going to do with our lives? All right, so I'm going to give an overview of what we're going to be doing today. We went over a large majority of the Song of Songs, and now we're going to be honing in on the finish line of the Song of Songs. And so chapter 7 or chapter 6 and 7 is when she's already maturing and she's falling in love with Jesus, and she's a lover, not a worker, and she's able to move forward without burning out, and she does everything with her first love. And what we see in chapter 8 is she continues that in the same spirit, and now she's fully mature in the poem. And so she's not only fully mature in her first love, where it can't be broken, but she's also fully mature as a leader, where she's actually really pouring out to everybody around her as a strong leader. And that's what we're going to hone in on today. So I'm not going to read the whole thing, but let's go ahead and start out with Song of Songs 8, 6, 7. And this is the one that we've been reading a couple of times the last week, couple of days. So set me as a seal upon your heart, as a seal upon your arm. For love is as strong as death, jealousy as cruel as the grave. Its flames are flames of fire, a most vehement flame. Many waters cannot quench love, nor can floods drown it. If a man would give for love all the wealth of his house, it would be utterly despised. So I'm going to go over this repetitively again. So we can get it really inside of our language. Set me as a seal upon your heart and a seal upon your arm. Okay, so how many of you have ever seen a movie where a king takes like a signet and places it on wax and puts it on an envelope? You ever seen that? Like, I don't know, King Arthur or something. I don't know. I never watched that movie, but if he did it, then he did it. If he didn't, then just imagine it. So you put it on the seal, and what that means, it's almost like, I don't know. Suppose you, I don't even think it works like that. I was going to say you're going to get a lot of land, right? And then President Duterte signed it. I don't even think it works that way, but let's just say he signed it, and he said with his powers in the government, he could override everything. And then he signed it, and he said, now you got 300 acres in Mindanao or something, or Cebu. And then so now you're walking around with this paper saying, I have X, Y, and Z. I got all these things that I am given to, and the president signed it. And that's the president's seal. I own all this stuff now. The president gave it to me. And you have it written, you have it in a legal document, and it's 100% legal. Everything's 100% official. And so you get that now. And so nothing can mess with you. It's like when we went to these public schools. I keep on going to these principals, and they say, you need to get a memorandum from the superintendent in the school division. If you get that memorandum, then you could do whatever you want. And so we went over there. And then we talked to the superintendent of the school division, and then he stamps it and then signs it. And then so now we can go into any school, any public school in that school division of like 30 schools. So we got that in 2 cities. So we have over 40, 50 public schools that we can do all of our YWAM curriculum and programs in. And so we go into the school. The principal could even look at us and go like, I think you're pangit. And then she can go like, yeah, I don't like you. You're not guapo. Get out of here. And then we go like, oh, we have a memorandum. Then they'll have to go like, well, what do you want? And then we want to do this, this, and this. And they have to go like, all right, great. So that's a memorandum. That's like a seal. Actually, in the school division, it's a seal too. It's a stamp. So that's what this is. So basically, the Shulamite is saying the King of Kings, in this picture, Solomon, the Lord of Lords, Jesus, has placed his seal on me, on my heart, and on my arm. And so that's essentially a foreshadowing of the Holy Spirit being within us. That now we have the full authority that God has for us. We have the fullness. We have all of the army, all of the power, all of the kingdom, everything that God promised to us with having this this Holy Spirit inside of us, God living inside of us. It's all in us now. And so the heart speaks about the affection, but then in ancient times, it did also speak about the strength. And then the arm also spoke about the strength as well. So it's speaking about the emotions and the affections, and the strength is now supernatural. I am no longer a regular human being that loves a regular human being. I'm no longer a regular human being that's doing regular work. I now am enduring in full maturity. I'm enduring in full leadership with supernatural emotion that God's given me, and supernatural power and leadership that God's given me in wisdom. And she's saying, that's how I'm living now. I'm fully mature in my call of Christ right now, in this specific allegory. And so in this specific poetic language. So that's what that section means right there. The next one is that it says, for love as strong as death and jealousy as cruel as the grave. I want you to think about Jesus resurrecting. When Jesus resurrected, it was a big sign that he was God, right? Because no one can escape death. Have you, besides resurrection, do you know anyone, once they're dead, can ever escape it? We're not talking about purgatory, because that's not real. But so it's like death, right? Once it grabs you, you can't escape it. Unless God does a supernatural work, which happens. But in the natural case of what's going on here, she's speaking of a grip that is so strong, it's stronger than death. So if death came in here and took anybody's life, if God doesn't resurrect them, they're gone. We can't do anything about it. The grip of the grave and the grip of death is so strong, nothing can change it. That's what he's saying his love is more like. His love is so powerful that once it grips you, nothing can get you away from it. It's stronger than death. So just imagine that picture. You're gripped by death, you can't be saved, you're done. You're gripped by God love. Your heart is fully possessed by him. You can't escape his love anymore. You're fully mature and fully possessed and fully overcome by the intoxication of loving Jesus. And you can't leave it. You can't leave his glance. You can't stop looking at him. You can't stop praying. You can't stop worshiping. You can't stop leading and being a minister and preaching the gospel. You're 100% voluntarily obsessed with Jesus. And he's taken you over. And then this is a picture over a long period of time. Until the day that she dies, she's fully gripped by the love of God. Nothing unshakable, persevering all the way to the end like Paul. That's what this is speaking about. And then it says, the flames of fire, a most vehement flame. Many waters cannot quench love, nor can the floods drown it. So if you can imagine the love being fire, and then if you can imagine these tsunamis that hit the Philippines or Asia, just flooding on top of this fire, and it still can't stop it. It's like beyond lava. It's beyond magma. It's a vehement flame that I have for God, that if you were to layer and layer and layer floods of water on the fire I have for God, it wouldn't even touch it. It's so hot and burning, nothing can come against it. The floods of the enemy can't come against it. The floods of darkness can't come against it. The floods of doubt, nothing can conquer my heart unless it's Jesus. Everything is completely strangely dim. Nothing matters anymore. That's what she's speaking about here. And then again, all the wealth of his house, it would be utterly despised. And so I shared that a couple of days ago, where it's essentially all the power in the world. Everything that you could have got an influence, everything the devil could have lied to you about, pleasures of the planet, it would be utterly despised. None of it would ever matter. And that's what we discussed a couple of days ago. All right. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into another section of this. All right. So this is ancient times. So stuff is the context is a little different and from our time. But Like, for example, in ancient times, when they used to have a marriage, the marriage would be for 7 days in this time. And then the husband and the wife, the newlywed husband and a wife, they would be in a tent. And everybody would be around them. And they would consummate their love. They would have sex. Everyone's like... And then everyone would be there, outside of the tent. And then if you don't know how sex works, then when a woman consummates for the first time, there's blood. It breaks the seal. That's like kind of how the representation of the body works. And then so blood would go on this blanket, this sheet, and it would stain the sheet. This is what we're talking about here. This is the same culture. This is Israel culture. They took it, and then they would put the sheet over the tent so that everyone would be able to see the blood of consummation. And then they would celebrate. Because this virgin is now married, and forever they'll never be apart. And it was beautiful because everybody would be like, wow, this is amazing. It's a representation of God and us. It's a representation of purity. It's a representation of a husband and a wife. And it's this pure sexual image of this covenant that can never be broken. Now our time is so sexualized and perverted because of all this stuff that's happening. If we did that, someone would go to jail. I forgot. I think I was talking in the men's group, and then one of the guys made a comment and said, like, "Man, if you did that here, you'd go to jail for something. Like someone would get in trouble for something because that's like perverted. That's like nasty. No one should talk about that." Somebody went up to me and said, "Yeah, this book, Song of Songs, it's demonic. My pastor told me to never teach this book because it's demonic." That's how bad sexualization has gotten in our generation. We don't have any picture of what pure sex looks like, what it was made for, that it's like disgusting to us now. Because the only thing our eyes have seen is pornography. It's these romance flicks where there's cheating. It's all of these people where they're like abusing each other's trust. And so sex is just terrible now. And then if you have sex in your marriage, you're wondering when they're going to leave you, at least in the world. I talked to so many girls, specifically one girl. I'm not going to tell you the country because then you might, I don't want you to think about anything. But then it's not my country. Let's just say it like that. But they think about that too. And they probably might think about it here in certain places. Where she was telling me, well, how can you get married before you guys have sex? And I was like, what are you talking about? And then she's all like, yeah, because what if the guy's bad at sex and you're going to have a bad marriage? Because that's the world's perspective of love right now. Then she told me, and then if you have bad sex, then you have to go find another husband. And I'm like, I try to be really like, not like, what the heck are you talking about? Because I know I used to think like that. So I didn't want to be like impatient. But then I was trying to understand where she's coming from, and then I explained it. I explained what sex really means of Jesus and the church and how it represents a foreshadowing of our seal of love with God that will never be broken in eternity. And she wasn't saved, so she didn't know what the heck I was talking about. But I told it anyways. I spoke the gospel. So that's what this next section is going to kind of sound like, all right? It's talking about the purity of someone getting ready, a virgin getting ready to be married again. So that's the context of that. So I'm going to read a little bit of it so that you could see where the Shulamite's heart is now. And then, so now she's older. She's more mature. Well, she is mature now. She's mature. She is older. She's more experienced. She's been leading. And now she's very experienced in what she's speaking about here. And so she says, we have a little sister and she has no breast. What shall we do for our sister in the day when she is spoken for? Okay, so I gave you that whole spiel because I wanted you to get the context. What she's sharing about here is that I have a sister now who's young in faith. That's what the spiritual context is. And she doesn't know that my little sibling, the one that just came to Jesus, doesn't know what it's going to be like to go through this whole journey with God. And so now she's saying, what are we going to do for her on the day she meets Jesus spiritually? So now she's thinking of it not just like, I'm so lovesick for Solomon. I'm so swooned by his legs of marble and his neck like armories and stuff like that. And his pillars of smoke. Like, I'm so swooned by Solomon. And, now she's thinking, well, I've gone through that now. I'm so in love with Solomon. What about this young girl that has no idea what love is like? And then she says that throughout the whole chapter. She says, "Oh, daughters of Jerusalem, do not awaken love until it's ready." She says that like 2 or 3 times. "Oh, daughters of Jerusalem," later when she goes through persecution, "do not awaken love until it's ready." Then she says it again later when she's going through even more and more maturity. "Oh, daughters of Jerusalem, do not awaken love until it's ready." Because she's like, love is not what you're thinking it is. This thing, it's got trials, it's got testings, it's got challenges, it got all this crazy stuff that you got to be ready for when you awaken this thing. And so now she's looking at it as a leader. As a spiritual leader, she's looking at all these young disciples and she's saying, what will we do with these people that have not been ravished by the love of Jesus yet? How will we train them? How will we disciple them? How will we raise them up? Okay, so she goes on and she says, if she is a wall, we will build upon her a battlement of silver. And if she is a door, she will enclose her with boards of cedar. So there's a couple of things there. I won't go into everything. But what she's essentially stating with that wall is that the walls and kingdoms are supposed to take on the fiery darts of the enemy. So she's going to stand there and say, well, if she can't protect herself, which she won't be able to, I have to stand as a leader and I have to be able to defend her and protect her until she's old enough to grow. Until she's able enough to take on the full maturity of what love and leadership with Jesus looks like. And so she's getting herself prepared to help this young disciple in the challenges of love. And now she's thinking like that. She's not just thinking about the apple tree. She's not just thinking about the shade and the comfort. And she's not just thinking about herself. Now she's grown through that. She's matured. And now she's thinking of the other people that she's raising up. Okay, so let's go ahead. I'm going to just move forward into this. The beloved says this. This is Solomon. You who dwell in the gardens, the companions listen to your voice. This is verse 13. Let me hear it. And so Solomon, this is how he closes the chapter, the whole book. He's saying, I want to hear your voice. I want to hear the voice of the young disciples. I want to hear the voice of my bride. And he never gets sick of the worship, of the intercession, of the preaching, of the leadership of his bride. That's the one thing that sets his heart ablaze, which is really amazing from the God who has everything. And even in this place of mature love, what still moves his heart is our heart voluntarily, consistently going back to him all the time. Let me hear your voice. That's what Solomon's saying here. And then it goes on, make haste, my beloved, and be like a gazelle or a young stag on the mountains of spice. And so now the beloved, in the beginning of chapter 2, she was saying, I don't want to go to the mountains. Don't take me there. Now she's going with him to the mountains and she's saying, behold, my beloved, look at him. Isn't he marvelous? Make haste in everything you're doing. And instead of being afraid of the challenges of loving Jesus, she's now with him in partnership and leadership and in ministry, fully in love with him and his first love. And they're running until all the nations of the earth know of his name. And that's the prophetic picture of what the Song of Songs is. So it goes all the way from a young disciple in spiritual language all the way to the fulfillment of the Great Commission to Matthew 28. And so it's a really amazing, amazing book. And we constantly talked about it this whole week. And I want you to keep that in your heart. Later on today, we're going to talk a little bit more about what does maturity look like. So I'm going to break that down again in terms of, we talked about intimacy a lot, and I'm going to go over that again. But then we're also going to go into leadership. And what does a mature leader look like? What is he going for in this last chapter 8? What is he developing us in as rulers and reigners and leaders of the gospel to the earth and us being in intimate love with Jesus?